You unfold a 400-watt solar panel, plug it into your power station, and watch the screen settle at 210 watts. So you do what anyone would do. You check the connections, reposition the panel, wait a few minutes. Still 210 watts. And now you're wondering if you got scammed. Here's the truth. You probably were not. That number on the screen is not a malfunction. It is the gap between a lab rating and the real world. And those two things are never the same. 400 watts is what that panel can produce under perfect laboratory conditions. Precise light intensity, a specific temperature, an exact angle. Charging watts are what survive heat, haze, cable resistance, and the power station's own input limits. The label is a ceiling. What you actually get depends on everything standing between the sun and that screen. So what exactly is that 400W number measuring? 5. Every panel manufacturer uses the same benchmark. That is the only reason the number is useful at all. It lets you compare panels against each other. What it does not do is describe your driveway at noon in July. Here is the trick. There are actually 3 different numbers in play, and most people treat them as one. First, nameplate watts, the 400W printed on the label. Second, what the panel actually produces in the field, which depends on real sunlight intensity, real temperature, and real angle. Third, charging watts accepted by the power station, what finally registers on that screen. Those 3 numbers are almost never equal, and they shrink in sequence. The 25 degrees cell temperature rating is worth pausing on. That is the temperature inside the panel itself, not the air. On a hot summer day, a panel sitting in direct sun can hit 60 to 70 degrees Celsius internally, 5% for every degree above that 25-degree baseline. A panel running at 65 degrees has already shed around 15 to 20% of its rated output before a single cable is connected. That is the first loss, and the power station has not even entered the picture yet. Temperature was the first loss. Sunlight itself is the second, and this one catches people off guard because the sky looks plenty bright. That panel rating assumes 1,000 watts of solar energy hitting every square meter of surface. That is a strong, direct, midday sun with clear sky. Real conditions almost never hold that number. Haze cuts it. Thin cloud cover cuts it harder. Early morning and late afternoon can feel warm on your face and still only deliver 300 to 500 watts per square meter, because the sun is sitting low and its energy is spreading across a much wider angle of atmosphere before it reaches your panel. Here is what makes this personal. You put the panel outside and it looks like it is in the sun. But if it is flat on the ground, or propped at a lazy angle against something, or just facing the wrong direction, you are not capturing that 1,000-watt benchmark. You are capturing whatever fraction happens to land on that tilted, misaligned surface. The difference between a panel aimed directly at the sun versus one sitting at a 30-degree offset can be 20 to 40% of output, on the exact same day, at the exact same time. Angle is a bias-controlled variable. That matters because the panel is not broken. You are just not pointing it correctly. So before you question the hardware, run a simple check. Is the panel aimed squarely at the sun right now, not where it was an hour ago? Strong direct light, steep sun angle, clean surface, correct orientation? Those 4 conditions together are what the rating actually requires. If any one of them is missing, the number on the label is already out of reach. Now here is the part that feels almost like a betrayal. The same sun doing the work is also quietly sabotaging the output. That 400-watt rating was measured at 25 degrees Celsius cell temperature, not air temperature. Cell temperature. There is a difference, and it is a big one. On a clear summer day, with the panel lying flat on a dark surface, the cell temperature can climb to 60, 65, even 70 degrees Celsius while the air around it feels perfectly comfortable. Dark absorptive materials hold heat. Poor airflow underneath makes it worse. Here is the mechanism. As cell temperature rises, voltage drops. Power is voltage multiplied by current, and current barely changes with heat. So when voltage falls, output falls with it. The panel is still receiving strong sunlight. The cells are still generating electricity, but the numbers are sliding downward in silence. 5% of their rated output for every degree the cell climbs above 25 Celsius. Run the math on a panel sitting at 65 degrees, and you are already looking at a 12 to 20% reduction from nameplate in full sun on a clear day. The label never mentions that. Lifting the panel slightly off a surface, Giving air room to move underneath can pull some of that temperature back down. It is not a complete fix, but it slows the climb. Heat is a broad, steady drain across the whole panel, but the next loss is sharper and hits harder in a much smaller space. That sharper loss is shading, and it is not proportional the way you would expect. Solar cells inside a panel are wired together in series strings. When one cell gets shaded, it does not just subtract its small share of power, it restricts current flow through the entire string it belongs to. One small shadow can effectively switch off a whole section of the panel while the rest sits in full sun doing nothing useful. That means a shadow the size of a finger can drop output by 20, 30, even 40% depending on how the cells are grouped. Not because most of the panel is dark, because of how the electrical circuit responds to that one blocked cell. Now think about how many things cast small shadows on a panel sitting outdoors. The carry handle, the charging cable crossing the surface, a tree branch, a vehicle side mirror, a railing, an open door, your own body while you crouch down to read the display. Every one of those is a candidate. Panels do include bypass diodes, which are designed to route current around a shaded string rather than let it drag everything down. That helps, but it does not restore full output. It just limits how catastrophic the drop gets. The wattage is still gone. Here is a fast field test. Find every shadow on the panel's surface and eliminate it. Reposition the panel, reroute the cable, move yourself. Then clean the surface. Compare the wattage reading before and after. If the number jumps, the panel was not underperforming. It was being blocked. That is information worth having before you blame the panel or the charge controller. So you have eliminated the shadows. Reposition the panel, and the wattage reading is still lower than the label. Here is where the problem moves inside the device you plugged into. Every power station with a solar input has a built-in charge controller, and most use MPPT, which stands for Maximum Power Point Tracking. What it does in practical terms is scan the panel's output to find the voltage and current combination that delivers the most power at that moment. That is useful, but the MPPT still operates within hard limits set by the power station's hardware. It cannot exceed them. Those limits appear in the fine print of the spec sheet, not the marketing headline. Things like input voltage range, maximum input current in amps, and maximum solar input in watts. A power station that advertises compatibility with a 400-watt panel might quietly cap solar input at 200 watts, or clamp current at 8 amps, or only accept voltage between 12 and 30 volts. That is clipping. If the panel can supply more current or more total power than the station's input ceiling allows, the station accepts up to its limit and ignores the rest. The panel is not underperforming. The station is refusing the extra power. The label on the panel is irrelevant at that point. Current caps are frustrating because they silently reduce what you get. Voltage mismatches are worse because they can cause the station to reject the panel entirely and charge nothing at all. That distinction matters when you are choosing equipment, which is exactly where we are headed next. Voltage mismatch is what separates weak charging from no charging at all. Every solar panel has two voltage numbers worth knowing. VMP is the voltage the panel operates at under real load. It's working voltage. VOC is the open circuit voltage, the higher number you measure when nothing is connected. Every power station with a solar input has its own voltage window, a minimum and a maximum it will accept. Here is where it breaks. If your panel's VMP falls below the station's MPPT startup threshold, charging either does not begin or starts and stalls. The station is not broken, it just never received a signal it recognized as valid input. If your panel's VOC exceeds the station's maximum input voltage, that is a harder problem. You are outside acceptable operating range, and you risk damaging the hardware permanently. Not a nuisance, a repair bill. That brings us to series and parallel wiring, which matters here only because each configuration pushes a different number. Panels wired in series add their voltages together. Panels wired in parallel add their currents. Series can push VOC above the station's ceiling. Parallel can push current above the station's amp limit. Both are real ways to misconfigure a working system. So before you buy adapters, extension cables, or extra panels, run one check. Pull the spec sheet for your panel and find VOC and VMP. Pull the spec sheet for your power station and find the PV input voltage range. If VMP sits comfortably inside that window and VOC does not exceed the maximum, you have a match. If either condition fails, no cable fixes it. Now there is one more variable working against that watt number, and it lives inside the battery itself. A depleted battery accepts power aggressively. Current flows in, voltage climbs, and your screen shows strong charging numbers. That is bulk charging. But once the battery reaches roughly 80 to 90% capacity, something changes. The battery management system deliberately reduces how much current it accepts. Not because anything is wrong, because forcing full current into a nearly full cell damages it. So the battery tapers the input down on purpose to finish safely. Here is the practical result. That same panel under identical sun can show 200 watts at 30% charge and 60 watts at 90% charge. If you see that drop and assume your solar setup has failed, you are diagnosing a protection feature as a malfunction. Some power stations add more layers on top of that. Internal temperature can trigger throttling. Battery protection logic built into the firmware can limit input below rated capacity. User-selected modes, like a reduced charge setting to extend long-term battery health, and cap incoming power even lower. So once you combine panel conditions, MPPT conversion losses, voltage matching, and now battery state, the 400-watt label becomes something specific. It is a planning ceiling. It tells you the maximum the system could ever accept under perfect conditions. It does not tell you what a real charge session will deliver. Work backward from that, and the numbers actually make sense. So work backward from everything we just covered, and here is what realistic planning actually looks like. A 400-watt panel will sometimes approach its rating. Clear sky, cool morning, panel aimed directly at the sun, battery at low charge. That alignment happens. But most of a real charge session does not look like that. Heat builds through the day, angle drifts, clouds move in and out, and the battery starts tapering once it crosses 80%. You are not living at the peak. You are averaging across all of it. Here is how to split the variables cleanly. Sun angle, temperature, shading, and clouds shift hour by hour. Those are temporary limits. But your MPPT input ceiling, your voltage window, your current cap, and your battery charge logic are baked into the hardware. Those do not change. Both kinds of loss are real, but only one of them can be solved by waiting for better weather. That distinction matters when you are sizing a system. Do not multiply 400 watts by every hour of daylight. Use your local usable sun hours, which accounts for the actual energy intensity across the full day. Then apply a system loss factor of roughly 20 to 30% to cover conversion inefficiency, heat, and charge taper. That gives you a defensible estimate instead of an optimistic one. The hard rule is this: treat the panel watt rating as a ceiling, never a daily average. Check the power station's PV input specifications before you buy. Then run a midday test under real conditions before you depend on that setup for anything critical. That one test will tell you more than any spec sheet. That test result is your answer. Not the label on the panel, not the headline spec, the real number. Here is the final rule. Stop asking whether you have a 400-watt panel. Start asking what watts actually survive sun angle, heat, shade, your MPPT ceiling, your voltage window, and battery taper. That surviving number is what your system actually runs on. The panel is probably not defective. The expectation usually is. When you are buying, match panel output specs to your power station's PV input limits before anything else. Then size the whole system around daily watt hours, under real conditions, not the peak number printed on the back of the panel. Drop your setup in the comments. Tell us the panel rating, the PV input spec on your power station, and the actual charging number you are seeing. That combination tells the real story, and it helps everyone else buying into similar gear figure out what they're actually getting. If this video saved you from a bad purchase or a bad assumption, subscribe. There is more of this kind of spec checking coming.